this. Why in the world did the slaves adopt the religion of their masters? And the answer is they saw how subversive it was. I mean, you know, I was just preaching actually the other day on the places in Exodus 7, 8, and 9 where Moses comes to Pharaoh and says, "Let my people go." And then Moses, you know, "Let my people go." You know why that resonates? Because that's a African American spiritual. When when Israel was in Egypt's land, "Let my people go." Why did they grab hold of that? I mean, they read the Bible and they said, "You know what? Yeah, our masters are they're bad, but you know what? Their own religion is like an arrow pointing at their heart." So they recognize the subversiveness of Christianity, and the fact is that if you really take hold on it, Christianity liberates from oppression. It can't really be an instrument of oppression. And I think one of the great things that ever happened in the history of the world was when African Americans had the perception to see that, and not just in their fury and anger say, "I don't care what's in the Bible, this is bad. Look at what they've done." Instead, basically saw the real God of their masters. It's amazing to me. It moves me. I'm sure not as much as it moves you, but still it moves me too. So I think those are some ideas you might want to. Also, a man. All right, sorry. In Making Sense of God, my book, there's a chapter on justice. It always makes me creepy to be promoted. I'm not trying to promote the book. The chapter in there. There's a man named Richard Balcom, who is recently retired. He was a professor of Bible at St. Andrews in Scotland, I think. Yeah, and he has an article that is not easy to find, but you can access it through that chapter, where he says that Christianity is he calls it a meta-narrative. That is, it's a comprehensive statement about truth, but he calls it a non-oppressive absolute. He says if you don't have any absolutes, if you don't have any moral absolutes, then how can you do justice? Because everything's relative. But he says most absolute claims tend toward oppression. So he brings out the fact that political left says socialism is really what's going to solve things. The political right says capitalism is what, free market is going to solve things. And he says they both tend toward totalitarianism. They tend to demonize the other side. But he tries to say the Bible has a narrative in it of God working through the weak. God chose the foolish things to shame the wise. He chose the weak things to shame the strong. He chose the things that are not to bring to nothing the things that are. He always chooses the second son, not the oldest son. He chooses the girl that nobody wanted. In the end, Jesus comes not with a sword in his hands, but with nails through his hands. And he basically makes the case that even though Christianity does believe in moral truth, it's an absolute truth, yet the biblical narrative is uniquely undermines the idea of oppression. It's a narrative reversal. The rich he casts down, the poor he lifts up, and all that. So Balcom makes the case that if there is an absolute, you need an absolute, that would not turn you into an oppressor, it would be the Christian story of the Bible. So it's in there, and it probably might help you with talking to the people you talk to. Somebody else. Sorry. Thank you.
Do you think that Jesus' bold claim that I am the truth, the way, and the life satisfies the three criteria that you mentioned about logos, ethos, and pathos?
Interesting. Do I think that when Jesus says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life," that lines up somehow with logos, pathos, ethos? I'll think about it. One of the problems, of course, is that I see your point, by the way. I see why you'd ask the question. Because truth seems to line up with logos, way more with ethos, and life maybe with pathos. Yeah, we'll see. I'll have to take a look at it and look at the Greek words and all that. But I think most people recognize that if you look at the Sermon on the Mount, you'll see actually Jesus recommending Christianity not just through reasoning, but also saying this is what it looks like embodied in a community. This is how it can help your heart. So, but I'll look at it and think about it. Thanks for the tip. I'm a speaker. If I can do that, I will do it. You know that. That'll be cool, really cool. John 14:6, Aristotle. All right.
Oh, wait, hold on. I'll get to you.
Hello, Dr. Keller. Thank you for coming. One of the things that seems to be underpinning a lot of your work, especially tonight here, is the concept of suffering and theodicy. I was just curious that you said that one of the things that we can't do is figure out God's reasons and what they might be, but that implies that God has reasons for suffering. And I don't know if I'm entirely comfortable with that, because that could mean that God is a tyrannical God. So I just wonder if you had any response to that.
Yeah, if God has reasons for suffering, that would make, that might mean his reasons are, it might make him a tyrant. I still think that, I think to say he's got good reasons that we don't know about is probably a good way to describe things. I know the trouble with the reason thing is it sounds like that you're suffering. When I say he's got good reasons, that might sound like, in fact, it might be, saying that in terms of cost-benefit analysis, in the end, it'll all work out for the good. I actually think when most people say bad things work out for good, or somebody says there was a silver lining, something bad, I broke my leg and I missed my appointment, and so I didn't get into Wake Forest University. But I met a nurse and I got married to her, and now we have 3 children, and it's just been wonderful. And so we would say in the end that even though, and I know I'm sure Dr. Hatch thinks that's still a bad deal. But the trouble is when we say bad things come out of, good things come out of bad, is it comes out of a cost-benefit analysis. And if you've just lost a child, for example, there is no reckoning of that. I mean, there's no way of saying, well, something better will come out of this. And so I do realize that I tried to say originally that if I'm talking to somebody who's been through it, then you have to be really careful about talking philosophically. I would say I'm talking philosophically right now. But as soon as you say I'm really uncomfortable with it, I'm going to start getting pretty sympathetic. Because I do think there is an unfathomable mystery. At a certain point, there's a mystery we can't fathom. When God says, when God says that I know the end from the beginning, if I seem tongue-tied, it's because this is the one place where you ought to be. If I'm really facile, if I've got nice, easy answers here, you should be very suspicious in the face of this one. But what I always loved about Tolkien, Tolkien stories, what I always there's one place where it's when Frodo and Sam wake up, and it's called the Field of Cormallen, and the ring has been destroyed and the Dark Lord is destroyed, and everybody says things are going to go well. So what they do is they have this big feast, and at one point I hope I can remember this. A minstrel comes out and starts to sing a song, and then it says their joy was as swords, and they passed away into far lands where yes, pain and joy flow together, and tears are the very wine of blessedness. Where pain and joy flow together, and tears are the very wine of blessedness. And I know what he's getting at. What he's getting at is somehow, in some mysterious way, the evil and suffering of this world, yes, I do think it's partly because of free will, by the way, for those of you. In other words, when C.S. Lewis says free will is part of the reason why suffering is here, because God gave free will, I would say that's probably part of it. That doesn't go far enough for me. But also it does mean that in the end, God is going to say, I'm going to bring about more love and glory than there ever would have been if it wasn't for evil, and that's the final defeat of evil. So I actually think about the tears of the very wine of blessedness is somehow, by the way, I actually also know the suffering in my life has made my joy in Christ infinitely deeper. And I see that, and I say, well, I look back at the things that I've suffered, and I say, but is that a cost-benefit analysis? It can't be that simple. So when I look at Jesus dying on the cross, God suffering himself, God saying, trust me, I'm sovereign, the promise that the eventual glory will actually be greater, not lessened by the suffering and evil, it enables me to say, okay, I can move forward on that. But just saying good reasons does sound like cost benefit. But by the way, here's a question about the tyrant thing. I don't know how you actually believe that Jesus is the Son of God, died on the cross, suffered for us. If you believe that, I don't know how you get God could be a tyrant. If you don't believe that, then I could see why, yeah. So, okay, that was a rambling answer, but you don't look totally destroyed by it, so yeah, we'll go on. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for being patient, by the way.
I wrote it down so I wouldn't mess this up. So there are many who look just like me that are flocking to the Nation of Islam, Hebrew Israelite sects of various other religions in light of the church's response to the issues regarding social justice that has our nation in turmoil. In some respects, do you see an apathy coming from the church? And how do you feel the household of faith should respond in a time like this?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, by the way, it's just just an accident, but you're actually in a shadow, so I actually can't see you at all. But, and don't worry, I think I know what you mean. Yes, of course, I think